Good morning. I say good morning. All right, you all can talk back to me this morning. I'm extremely humbled and honored to be with you all on this most august and auspicious occasion. Oh yes, as we commemorate the work and witness, and thus the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'd like to thank the MLK Observance Committee and the Morris area clergy for the invitation to come and speak. I'm humbled by the prodigious trust that you all have vested in me and in the younger generation by extending this invitation to me. I do not take it lightly. This morning I'd like to speak from the title, What Are We Doing? What are we doing? Will you just turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor? Neighbor. Don't look at me, I'm in a different neighborhood. Turn to your neighbor. Say neighbor. Neighbor. Oh neighbor. Oh neighbor. What? I'll say what are we doing? No, turn to another neighbor. That person didn't believe it. Say other neighbor. Oh other neighbor. The Elmina Slave Castle, the Gold Coast, Ghana, West Africa, a place where people became property, where they were stripped of their dignity and robbed of their pedigree as they waited to be shipped off to faraway domains. My 8-year-old horrified eyes stared at this imperious and imperial structure of colossal colonialism and control. It was an edifice built to detain enslaved Africans in a country that was their own. The pinnacle of profound contradiction was the chapel, where the same European persons who enslaved Africans would conduct worship services to a God of liberation, with dungeons holding people under them. As a child encountering this egregious contradiction, I could not help but pull the coattails of my mother and ask Mama, what were they doing? My little heart could not accept seeing the wrong and not fighting for change. Dearly beloved, may I submit to you this morning that unless our hearts, like MLK, today see the wrong of social injustices and we are driven to fight for change, like that chapel in the slave castle, we can begin to hold religious and moral festivities, and yet the people under us, detained in economic and political change, will remain not free. Cannot ignore their plight and predicament. Therefore, I must posit a profound query for us this morning. What are we doing? Not what are we saying, because it's possible to have a religion on our lips that's not evident in our lives. What are we doing? Because we live in a day where King described it's the survival of the slickest. And where people obey the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. We can have a king breakfast but not live a king life. That's why enslaved Africans in America developed in their hymnology the phrase, do you got good religion? Good religion. Certainly, Lord, certainly, Lord. And because they knew that your theology was inextricably bound to your anthropology, they would follow up that question with, do you love everybody? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, Lord. We cannot just have a breakfast, and many of our brothers and sisters cannot even afford to be sitting at our table. What are we doing? King called all of us not to have breakfast while the masses go hungry. King never asked for a day, he asked for our lives. He challenges our complicity when we wear our nice suits and dresses made by designers whose names we cannot pronounce. And even the names of the ones that we can pronounce, we still change the name a little bit, like J.C. Penney. For those of us who are on a budget that hasn't budged yet. and yet forget that the global market is predicated on the exploitation of the underclasses. King did not just fight for justice, he called us to join the fight for justice. He said non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as cooperation with good. We cannot just have breakfast. Notice I said just have breakfast. I'm a hungry graduate student. Keep the breakfast coming. But we can't just have breakfast and not seek to break the involuntary fast of millions in our world. Or else we can run the risk of having a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. We run the risk of, as King says, being well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to inaction. We run the risk of only being activists on Facebook but not showing up for any protests. King calls us to examine ourselves. That's why I asked the question, what are we doing, all of us together? Because King reminds us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied together in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one affects all. We must do it together. We need each other. Tradition to work together to seek justice. That's why as churches and local businesses and educational institutions, we must emerge from our secluded spaces of success. Martin did not care about our success. Don't tell us about your success. Don't tell us that you were the first minority this or you were the first minority that. Tell us what you're doing as the first minority. Heard somebody say wisely that peacocks strut because they cannot fly. More is caught than taught. What are we doing in our positions? Or are we perpetuating the same classist and racist and sexist structures that made us the first in the first place? Will we reach out? Not just give a hand up, but a hand out. Will we sacrifice popularity for integrity? Will we put ethics over expedience and begin investing our time in the next generation? Will we have courage to transcend our fears? What are we doing when we see Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Tanisha Anderson, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Eric Gardner? What are we doing? King writes that America's police force is notoriously known for their brutality and racially charged abuse, and that the court system is hegemonically controlled by a homogenous ethnic group. It is not that King was against the police. We appreciate the work of the police. We are against police brutality. So what are we doing when the rich get taught and the poor get tested? What are we doing when we have schools that are more concerned with compliance than curiosity? What are we doing when it's easier to buy a gun than to get a job? What are we doing when blacks go to jail 6 times? Even though 6 times more likely to go to jail, even though they commit crimes at the same rate as their white counterparts. What are we doing when 1 in 3 black men are going to jail and 1 in 6 Hispanic men are going to jail? What are we doing when 40% of young black children are growing up in abject poverty? What are we doing when we have a school to prison pipeline? What are we doing with gender inequality where women work twice as hard to get half as far? What are we doing when healthcare is an accessory for the poor and a necessity for the rich? What